Hello and welcome to our podcast episode number 71, Corrupt Cop Trapped in His Own Game, Fighting for Survival and Redemption. I'm Thomas, and I am here with my friend Tim. Today we are going to discuss a film called 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown. 12 Rounds 3. Lockdown is a 2015 American action film about Detective Tyler Burke and his corrupt colleagues who frame Detective John Shaw for murder after he uncovers their illegal activities. With the police station on lockdown, Shaw must outsmart his pursuers and clear his name while protecting others from the corrupt cops. So, Timothy, what's your take on 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown?
Well, Tom, I have to say that 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown is an intriguing concept. It's always interesting to see a story where the protagonist is wrongfully accused and has to fight against the very people who are supposed to be on his side. The premise of a police station being locked down adds an extra layer of tension to the film, as it creates a confined environment where the stakes are raised even higher. However, I must admit that I have some reservations about this particular installment in the franchise. For one thing, the action genre has seen quite a few films set in lockdown locations such as Die Hard or The Raid. It's hard to imagine how 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown, will manage to bring anything new or fresh to the table. Additionally, I'm not particularly fond of studios producing action films. Their previous efforts have often felt more like extended promos for their wrestlers than compelling stories.
I see where you're coming from, Timothy. The concept certainly has potential, but it remains to be seen how well the film executes that potential. As far as we studios is concerned, they have had their fair share of successes and failures in the past. Personally, I think it all depends on the writing and direction of the film. If those elements are strong enough, then even a seemingly familiar premise like this one can still be enjoyable to watch. That being said, Tom, I must admit that I am quite excited for 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown. The trailer looked promising, and I always appreciate it when an action film features a gritty and realistic portrayal of corruption within the police force. Plus, Dean Ambrose's acting debut in this film has piqued my interest. He's proven himself to be quite talented outside the ring, so I have high hopes for his performance here. What about you, Timothy? Do you think 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown, will live up to our expectations or disappoint us?
Well, Thomas, I am cautiously optimistic about 12 Rounds 3. Lockdown, as you mentioned, the portrayal of police corruption is an interesting aspect that hasn't been explored enough in action films. Furthermore, Dean Ambrose has shown promise as a performer outside of his wrestling career, so I hope he brings his best game to this role. However, it remains to be seen how well the film will handle the action sequences and keep things engaging for the viewers. The trailer did hint at some impressive set pieces and stunts, but we'll have to wait and see if they are executed effectively in the finished product. One thing that concerns me is the runtime of 90 minutes. It feels a bit short for an action film with such a high concept. I'm not sure if they will be able to fully explore everything within that time frame. But hopefully, the pacing won't suffer too much as a result. Overall, I think there's potential for 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown, to be an enjoyable ride, provided it delivers on its promises. Tim, so have you read or heard any interesting trivia about this movie? I always like learning fun facts about the films we discuss.
Let me think. Well, according to InBeat, the film's budget was $12 million, and it made $340,000 during its opening weekend in the U.S., which is not a good sign considering how much they spent on it. Also, this is Dean Ambrose's acting debut, so that could be seen as either a blessing or a curse, depending on how well he does. Another interesting bit of trivia is that the film was released in select theaters across the US and straight to video on demand, which isn't common for We Studios production. These are just some facts I came across while researching the movie before we discussed it today. That's very interesting information, Timothy. It seems like 12 Rounds 3 Lockdown was released under some peculiar circumstances compared to other We Studios productions. It makes me wonder if the decision to go straight to video on demand had anything to do with the film's content or quality. Do you think that releasing it in such a way affected its reception and success?
Well, Thomas, as you know, I have been following We Studios closely over the years, so let me share some of my thoughts on this matter. In recent years, their films have struggled to find an audience due to various factors, including changing tastes in audiences and the increasing competition from other studios. It's possible that releasing 12 Rounds 3 Lockdown straight to video on demand was a strategic move by We Studios to reduce their risk and target a more specific niche audience who might be interested in watching action films like this one. However, it also could have been a sign of lower expectations from the studio themselves, or even a lack of confidence in the film's quality. Regarding your earlier point about Dean Ambrose's acting debut being both a blessing and a curse, I think it could go either way. On one hand, having a relatively unknown actor play the lead role can be refreshing and give the audience something new to look forward to. However, if the performance is not up to par or if the character isn't well written, it could end up being more of a liability than an asset. Only time will tell how audiences will respond to Ambrose's acting chops in this film.
That's a very insightful analysis, Timothy. It seems that We Studios has been experimenting with their release strategies recently, as they have also tried releasing some films theatrically while others went straight to video on demand or streaming services like Netflix. Do you think there's any particular reason behind this change in approach? Or do you believe it could be due to external factors such as changes in audience, preferences, and the overall state of the film industry?
Well, Thomas, I can only speculate on the reasons behind We Studios' changing release strategies. However, I believe that a combination of both internal and external factors is at play here. Internally, they might be trying to diversify their revenue streams by experimenting with different distribution methods. Additionally, they could be looking for ways to reduce risk and costs associated with producing and marketing films. Externally, as you mentioned earlier, the audience preferences are changing rapidly due to various factors such as the rise of streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video, which offer a vast selection of content at affordable prices compared to traditional cinematic releases. Moreover, the increased competition from other studios producing high-quality content also plays a significant role in shaping audience preferences and dictating their viewing habits. In conclusion, I believe that We Studios' changing release strategies are an attempt to adapt to these ever-evolving circumstances while still trying to find the right balance between risk-taking and profitability. Only time will tell if these strategic shifts will pay off for them in the long run or not.
Thank you for sharing your insights on the matter, Timothy. It's fascinating to see how these studios adapt and change their strategies over time. Now, moving on to our discussion about 12 Rounds 3. Lockdown itself, let me start by saying that I found it quite engaging. As someone who appreciates action movies, I must say this film delivered a solid thrill ride with a combination of intense chases and high-octane stakes moments of drama and suspense. The characters were well developed and acted their roles out exceptionally, and the story was paced very well told through their acting performances. My only real criticism would be that I wanted to see more from the action scenes, but it was a great thriller than expected.
Well, Tom, I can't say I share your enthusiasm for action movies, but my preferences are towards historical films. However, as someone who has always been fascinated by studios' films and their love of the First World War years old, I was intrigued by this film industry due to directing my friend Tim and Thomas at that time worked on a set designer. As far as Tom and his wife for the podcast, Tim Birkenstein's podcast, their chemistry. The only criticism is fascinated by their roles in the film industry and have been working for decades. But their characters and my wife's relationship with each other, people know that they had always argued over the years of experience disagreeing about their films to work, their roles as a producer, while Timothy's their lives in the film critic.
Thank you for sharing your insights into the film industry and their work on Tim Birkenstein's podcast, Timothy. It's fascinating to learn about how they got started in this field and how their personal experiences have influenced their careers. Now back to our discussion of 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown. I must say that Dean Ambrose's portrayal of Detective John Shaw was quite impressive for a debut performance. His character showed great depth and complexity, with the audience able to sympathize with his plight while also questioning some of his actions throughout the film. The supporting cast also delivered solid performances, particularly in their roles as corrupt cops trying to frame Shaw for murder. It was refreshing to see such a diverse range of characters within the police force portrayed on screen, adding an extra layer of realism and intrigue to the storyline.
I couldn't agree more with you there, Thomas. Dean Ambrose definitely showed promise as an actor in this film. His character, Detective John Shaw, was well-rounded and relatable despite being thrust into a high-stakes situation. It was interesting to see how the film explored themes of loyalty and redemption through his character's journey. The supporting cast also did an excellent job in their roles, as you mentioned. They brought depth to the story by providing different perspectives on corruption within the police force and adding layers of complexity to their characters. This made it difficult for the audience to predict who they could trust throughout the film, which added to its overall suspense.
Yes, I particularly enjoyed watching Roddy Piper's portrayal of Detective Hulls in this movie. His character had some truly memorable moments, and his performance was both captivating and chilling at times. It was also great to see him share the screen with Ambrose, as their chemistry added an extra dimension to their scenes together.
Absolutely. Roddy Piper's performance as Detective Hulls was truly unforgettable. His character was multifaceted and had a darker side that he struggled with throughout the film, which made him all the more compelling to watch.
The dynamic between him and Ambrose's character added another layer
of tension and suspense to an already thrilling storyline.
Speaking of tension and suspense, I have to say that the action sequences in 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown, were quite impressive as well. The chase scenes through the police station were particularly intense, with plenty of close calls and narrow escapes for the characters involved. It was also refreshing to see a mix of practical stunts and visual effects used during these sequences, adding realism while still allowing for some more over-the-top moments that are typical in an action film like this one.
I completely agree with you there, Tom. The action scenes were definitely one of the strongest points of the movie. They were well choreographed and paced perfectly to keep the audience engaged throughout the film. The mix of practical stunts and visual effects, as you mentioned, added an extra layer of realism that helped ground the more outlandish elements of the story. Overall, I found myself thoroughly entertained by 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown, and would definitely recommend it to fans of action films who are looking for a thrilling ride with likable characters and plenty of twists and turns along the way.
Speaking of action movies with influential characters and intense chase sequences, I can't help but think about the classic 1980s film Die Hard. While it may be an older film, its impact on the genre cannot be understated. The character of John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, has become a pop culture icon, and his struggle against the terrorists in Nakatomi Plaza remains one of the most memorable action sequences in cinema history. It's interesting to see how films like 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown continue to pay homage to classics like Die Hard while still managing to bring something new and original to the table.
Indeed, Thomas, I couldn't agree more. Die Hard is definitely one of those films that has left an indelible mark on the action genre as a whole. The combination of memorable characters, intense chase sequences, and a gripping storyline make it a timeless classic. It's inspiring to see how modern filmmakers continue to draw inspiration from these older movies while still managing to infuse their own unique style and perspective into their work. Personally, I think this shows just how strong the appeal of action films can be when they are done right. From Die Hard to 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown, there's something truly captivating about watching characters battle against insurmountable odds in high-stakes situations that keep audiences coming back for more.
Now, Timothy, as a fan of action movies myself, I must ask you this. What are some other modern action films or TV series that you think have been influenced by 12 Rounds 3? Lockdown? Are there any specific elements from the film that you think have resonated with audiences or other filmmakers in recent years?
Well, Tom, as I mentioned earlier, I'm more of a historical movie guy myself. But since you asked me for my thoughts on this matter, I would say that it's difficult to pinpoint specific modern action films or TV series influenced by 12 Rounds 3. Lockdown, as its impact may be less visible than in the case of classics like Die Hard. However, I do believe that there are certain elements from the film which might have resonated with audiences and other filmmakers alike. For example, the intense chase sequences and high-stakes action set pieces found in 12 Rounds 3. Lockdown could be seen as inspiration for similar scenes in more recent films or TV shows such as John Wick or Fast. Additionally, the themes of loyalty, redemption, and betrayal explored within the film's narrative might also have influenced other creators working within the action genre.
That's an interesting perspective, Timothy. I suppose it's true that some films may not leave as large of an impact on the industry as others, but they still can be enjoyed for their own merits. As for my final thoughts on 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown, I think it was a solid action thriller with plenty to offer audiences who appreciate the genre. The characters were well developed and acted out their roles exceptionally. The story was paced very well and told through their acting performances, and there was enough variety in the action sequences to keep things interesting. My only real criticism would be that I wanted to see more from the action scenes, but overall, it was a great thriller than expected.
Well said, Thomas. I agree with your assessment of 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown as an enjoyable action film for fans of the genre. It had its ups and downs, but ultimately delivered on what it set out to do, provide an entertaining ride full of suspense drama and high-octane stakes. While I might not be a die-hard fan of action movies like you are, Thomas, I appreciate their ability to transport audiences into a world where anything can happen and heroes always find a way to prevail against all odds. And in that regard, 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown certainly succeeds in capturing the essence of an action film.
All right, let's wrap up our discussion for today. To sum it up, we both had different experiences watching 12 Rounds 3. Lockdown, but agreed that it was a good action thriller with well-developed characters and a paced storyline. We also talked about how the film may have been influenced by classics, such as Die Hard, while bringing its own unique style to the table. Lastly, We touched upon some modern action films or TV series that could have been inspired by certain elements of 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown.
Yes, I think our discussion has covered a lot of ground and provided interesting insights into both the film itself and its place within the action genre as a whole. Once again, thank you for sharing your thoughts and perspectives, Thomas. It's always great to have such an engaging conversation with someone who loves films as much as we do.
Indeed, Tim. It's been a pleasure discussing 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown with you today. And now that we've come to the end of our podcast, let me remind our viewers to hit that like button if they enjoyed what they heard. Subscribe for more interesting film discussions in the future, and leave us a comment with your thoughts about the movie or any other topics related to films. Remember, folks, sharing is caring.
Yes, let's not forget to share this video with all your friends who love action movies as well. Who knows, they might have missed out on 12 Rounds 3, Lockdown, but now they can watch it and form their own opinions. Until next time, keep watching those films, and we'll see you soon for another exciting episode of Tim and Tom's Film Nights.
Cheers. And remember to stay safe out there.